Welcome, traveler. It's time now to let go. The world of the waking is dimming, the day's weight has softened it to dusk, and all the sharp edges of your thoughts are beginning to dissolve. You are safe now, here in this quiet space where nothing must be done, and nowhere calls your name. Let your body become still. Feel the hush wrap around you like ancient velvet, like moss on stone. There is no rush here, no burden of time, just the long breath of a story, drifting, like fog, over forgotten hills. Chapter 1. Beneath the whispering canopy. The forest was already half asleep when the traveler arrived, its canopy dimmed in shades of pewter and ink, each leaf a fading sigh of light. The path behind them had vanished. Perhaps it had never truly existed. But ahead, the trees opened in a hush of breathless invitation. There was no map, only the faint shimmer of embers beneath the underbrush, a flickering line of soft gold that curled like a cat through the woods. The traveler did not speak. They rarely did. Words felt too heavy for this place, too sharp. Instead, they moved slowly, as one might through a dream they are not sure they wish to wake from. Each step sank gently into moss and loam, the earth cool and forgiving. The air was rich with the scent of cedar, leaf mold, and something older, something like memory or forgotten song. Here, light did not shine so much as float. Fireflies drifted like sleepy stars caught in slow tides, and high above, thin strands of mist curled through the boughs like the remnants of old stories not yet spoken aloud. The ember path glowed faintly at their feet. Not fire exactly, there was no heat, no flame, but a kind of warmth nonetheless, as though the forest itself remembered long-lost hearths and traced their echoes into the soil. The light pulsed slowly, in rhythm with the traveler's steps, guiding but never rushing. It seemed to hum in a language too gentle to hear, but not too quiet to feel. They paused near an ancient tree, gnarled and hollowed at the heart. Its bark creased like the skin of a sleeping giant. Something lived inside, a slow, curling presence, like a breath held too long, but it did not stir. The traveler placed a hand on the trunk, and the wood felt cool, but awake, as if the tree had been waiting patiently for someone who would not ask questions. Above them, the sky deepened into velvet hues, indigo, silver, and the faintest trace of violet. The last bird call had faded, and in its place, the forest sang a softer lullaby. The creak of limbs swaying, the hush of leaves turning over in their sleep, the quiet exhale of wind through nettled undergrowth. A small stream wound through the roots like a silken ribbon, its surface glassy with reflected starlight. The traveler knelt to sip from it, and the water tasted of stone and memory, of snowmelt and lullabies once whispered by unseen mouths. It left a cool trail down their throat, and in its wake a strange comfort bloomed, as though something within them was being gently unfolded. Farther along the path, shapes began to emerge in the haze. Not creatures exactly, though some had the suggestion of limbs or wings, but more like reminders, shadows cast by emotions not yet named. One drifted past, a thin silver filament like the wisp of a dream forgotten upon waking. Another lingered just beyond sight, tall and thin and pulsing softly, like a heartbeat made visible. None of them made sound. None of them watched. They simply were. The traveler felt no fear, only the kind of awe that wraps itself around silence, as if Every step forward unspooled a thread of something sacred, something beneath thought, beneath language. They reached a low clearing where the embers gathered in a spiral, curling inward like a sleeping nautilus. The traveler stood at its edge, listening. A breeze passed through, cool and careful, and with it came the scent of smoke, though no fire burned. It smelled of candle wax and hearthstone, of pages turned slowly and libraries no longer marked on any map. And in that spiral of ember-light, something stirred, not a creature, but a feeling, a memory not their own, a glimpse of marble towers wrapped in ivy, of bridges spun from silver thread, of bells that rang once and have not rung since. The traveler closed their eyes, felt the echo, let it pass through them like dusk passes through the trees. When they opened their eyes again, the spiral had straightened into a path once more, leading deeper, always deeper. The forest was darker now, but the embers shone brighter, cradling their steps in gentle light. And above all, the hush remained like a promise kept. The traveler moved on, slowly, softly, dreaming with their eyes open, and somewhere far ahead, the first glimmer of Hollowvale, lost city of twilight and ruin, began to stir from its slumber. Chapter 2. The Grove of Listening Stones. There was no telling how long the traveler had walked. Time had softened here, blurred at the edges like ink soaked into velvet parchment. The ember-lit path unfurled beneath their feet in its quiet golden hush, as steady and patient as breath. The deeper they went, the more the forest changed, not with suddenness, but with the slow grace of evening becoming night. The trees grew taller here, but thinner, like pillars holding up a cathedral of stars. Their bark had turned pale, nearly white, etched with fine silver threads that glimmered when the wind stirred the leaves. The foliage no longer rustled in green murmurs, but in soft whispers, barely heard, yet deeply felt, like voices speaking behind a dream. The traveler paused, and the hush welcomed them like an old friend. Each breath they took seemed to draw the forest closer, as though the trees leaned in to listen. And then the grove revealed itself. It was a wide clearing, perfectly round, cupped gently in the arms of the woods. At its center, a ring of tall stones stood upright in the moss, each one worn smooth by ages untold. They rose at uneven heights, yet their presence was steady, almost regal, guardians of stillness, sentinels of silence. The stones glowed faintly in the emberlight, not reflecting it, but seeming to recall their own memory of flame. The traveler stepped between them, and the air changed, becoming denser yet softer, like the hush of snowfall. There was no sound from the forest now, only the breath of stillness, the kind of stillness that carried meaning, though no words were spoken. They sat upon the moss, cross-legged and unhurried, in the center of the circle. The ground was cool, but not cold, the kind of coolness that soothed rather than chilled. Around them, the stones hummed, not with music, but with memory. Old, old memory, layers of it, curling like fog. Then came the voices. They did not speak aloud, nor rise like sound. Rather, they emerged in the mind, gentle as a drifting thought, clear as a bell in water. The traveler did not flinch. They had heard such voices before, though never quite like this. Each stone spoke in turn, not in language, but in impression, in feeling. The first shared the taste of rain on ancient marble and the echo of footsteps in a hall whose roof had long since fallen. The second gave the scent of lavender grown wild through broken streets and the warmth of a hand once held, now gone. The third offered the vision of children chasing fireflies through empty archways, laughter like wind chimes, long vanished. Each stone told its own quiet truth, fragments of a world that had drifted into sleep. Hollowvale. The name curled through the traveler's mind like a thread of smoke. A city that had once stood tall with grace and beauty, now folded into twilight, not destroyed, not forgotten, but remembered differently by the trees, by the wind, by the stones, by the hush. The traveler closed their eyes and let the memories pass through them. There was no sorrow here, only stillness, no mourning, only reverence. These were not ruins, they were remnants, not broken, but waiting. As the traveler breathed, a soft wind passed through the grove. The moss rippled. The embers flared brighter for a moment, then softened again, as if sighing. One by one, the stones faded back into stillness, their stories shared for now. The traveler rose slowly, respectfully, bowed their head, and stepped out of the circle. The path was still there, waiting, curling onward like the tail of a gentle flame. The trees leaned close, their branches swaying just enough to guide without pushing. Ahead, the forest shifted again. The white trees grew sparser, giving way to darker, denser growth. Vines heavy with night blossoms unfurled along the ground, their petals glowing faintly with a soft, silvery blush. The scent of them, cool, sweet, and strangely familiar, wrapped around the traveler like a half-remembered lullaby. And still the embers glowed beneath their feet, faithful, unfading, leading deeper into dream. Above, the sky had turned a deep blue-gray, dusted with stars that blinked slowly as if watching with old, drowsy eyes. The traveler walked on, each step lighter than the last, as if the forest were quietly lifting the weight of the world from their shoulders. A sound, soft, rhythmic, low, began to pulse through the earth, not loud enough to disturb, only enough to guide, a heartbeat, slow and ancient, thudding deep beneath stone and root. The path curved gently toward it, and somewhere just ahead, beyond the reach of starlight and branch, something old and beautiful awaited, something not seen in waking eyes for many lifetimes. The traveler did not quicken their pace. There was no need. Nothing here would be lost to haste. Every step was part of the remembering, and the ember path led on. Chapter 3. The Lantern Pool. The air grew softer as the path turned. It was not that the forest became warmer. No, the breeze still carried the cool hush of deep-rooted places, but something in the texture of the world grew gentler, as if the leaves themselves had turned to velvet, and the sky was now woven from fine dusk. The traveler followed the ember path as it curved through a grove of hanging vines and shadowed branches. Above, the canopy had opened just enough to reveal a wide spill of stars, gleaming like softened pearls in a bowl of ink. There was no moon, only the faint silver sheen of starlight and the pulsing golden hush of the embers below. They came upon the pool without realizing they had arrived. One moment the path curled through undergrowth. The next it opened into a glade so still it felt untouched by even breath. The water stretched before them like black glass, wide and utterly smooth, as if not even time dared to disturb its surface. Trees arched over its banks, their trunks bent as though bowing in reverence. Their roots reached out, fingers threading into the moss, holding the world in place. The only light came from beneath the surface. Small lanterns, dozens, perhaps hundreds, drifted below the water, their glow soft as candlelight behind cupped hands. They floated in no particular pattern, yet together they formed a slow, swaying constellation. Some flickered gently, others held steady, and none ever rose to the surface. They simply were, suspended in the quiet deep, as though the pool itself had remembered the sky and held it close. The traveler stepped to the water's edge, their boots sinking slightly into the moss. The air smelled of lilies and old stone, with the faintest trace of wax and cedar wood. A ripple crossed the surface, so slow it seemed to take minutes to reach the far shore. And when it passed, the traveler saw their reflection, not as they were, but as they had been in forgotten moments. Standing in a rain-soaked alley, face upturned, seated beneath an overhang of ivy, humming to no one, walking beside someone whose hand they could no longer quite remember. The pool reflected not just form, but feeling. They sat upon this bank, and the moss welcomed them like a shawl. No thoughts pressed in, no names rose, only the soft rhythm of the lanterns beneath the surface, drifting in unhurried procession. Somewhere far off, a sound like chimes in water rang out, faint and slow, as if time itself were singing. The traveler listened without needing to understand. There was meaning even without meaning. A figure emerged across the water, no more than a shimmer at first, like moonlight behind a veil. It stood on the far bank, unmoving, watching. Not a person, not quite, but shaped as one, draped in robes woven from mist and memory. A crown of ivy rested upon its brow, though its face was featureless, smooth as still water. The traveler did not startle. They simply watched in return. The figure raised a hand, pale, gloved in shadow, and pointed to the pool, then to the traveler's chest. The gesture was not a command, but an invitation. The traveler looked down, and in their lap, nestled in their palm without ever being placed there, was a single glowing ember, small, warm, beating like a tiny sleeping heart. They rose without hurry and stepped forward. The water welcomed their reflection again, but this time something was different. The lanterns below stirred, circling gently. The traveler knelt, cupped the ember, and let it fall into the pool. It did not sink, nor did it float. It joined. At once, the light beneath the surface brightened, not all at once, but in a soft bloom, like petals opening at dawn. A single note rang out, not with sound, but with sensation. Peace, deep, resonant, echoing through the bones and soft parts of the mind. The pool shimmered. The reflection changed again, not into memories, but into something new. A gate, a bridge, a tower bathed in silver vines. The outline of Hollowvale, perhaps, or its dream. The figure on the far bank slowly turned and walked back into the trees, dissolving into mist as it went. No farewell, no need. The ember path reappeared at the pool's edge, glowing a little brighter now, as if pleased, as if proud. The traveler turned away from the water, carrying no lantern, yet somehow carrying light. And deeper they went. The hush followed, thick as velvet. The air hummed with a sweetness like lilac and smoke. Crickets sang a lazy lullaby rhythm in the distant brush, and the breeze carried whispers that spoke not in words, but in the memory of stories once told by someone who loved you. Each step was gentler than the last, each breath slower. And in the hush between footsteps, the name Hollowvale echoed again, not aloud, not even in the mind, but in the feeling of being called home. Chapter 4. The Sleepwalker's Orchard. The forest began to thin, slowly, like a veil being drawn back layer by layer. Trees softened into silhouettes, more suggestion than form. Moss gave way to soft earth, and the embers beneath the traveler's feet glowed in a wider arc now, stretching out as though easing into a sigh. The hush had deepened into something richer than silence, something complete. It surrounded the traveler like wool wrapped around an old tale. There were no insects here, no birds, no rustling branches, only the sound of breath and heartbeat, and even those seemed part of the stillness. They walked without hurry. The ground sloped gently upward, and the air held the faint perfume of ripened fruit and cold leaves. Somewhere nearby, a breeze stirred that had not stirred in centuries. And then the orchard revealed itself. It did not arrive all at once, but emerged as if the traveler's eyes simply grew capable of seeing it. Row upon row of ancient trees, gnarled and silver-limbed, heavy with strange, glowing fruit. The fruit shimmered faintly, not golden nor silver, but something between, like memory caught in crystal. Some hung low, brushing the tops of wild grasses. Others clung high, untouched, still as sleeping stars. The orchard stretched far in every direction, yet it didn't feel vast. It felt quiet, held in place, protected. As the travelers stepped between the first trees, they felt a shift in the air, as though they had entered a chapel woven not of stone, but root and bloom. Each tree seemed to hum, low and barely there in different tones, not music, not exactly, but harmony nonetheless. And then they saw them, the sleepwalkers. Figures moved gently among the trees, barefoot and slow. They wore robes spun from fog and dusk, faces hidden in the dimness, though no effort was made to conceal them. They simply were, drifting between trunks and blossoms, touching the fruit with reverent fingers. Some murmured as they walked, soft words without language. Others seemed to glide, eyes closed, arms open as if embracing something only they could see. None acknowledged the traveler, yet none ignored them. The orchard existed outside of greeting and farewell. The traveler continued on, their steps softened by the hush. They passed a sleepwalker who cradled a glowing fruit in both hands, as if offering it to the air. Another knelt beneath a branch, listening to the bark with eyes full of dreams. Their presence was neither haunting nor serene, just true, echoes of something between waking and remembering. The traveler reached a tree whose trunk was wide and cracked with silver veins. Its fruit hung low, swaying gently, though no wind stirred. A single one, shaped like a teardrop, hovered near eye level. It glowed softly, not bright, but warm. Drawn by something deep and wordless, the traveler reached out. Their fingers brushed the fruit, and in that moment the orchard fell still. The light of the fruit pulsed once. Then the traveler saw, not with eyes, not through time, but through feeling. They saw a quiet room lit by candlelight, a pair of hands holding theirs, a book open to the middle, a story never finished. They saw a window overlooking a city wrapped in ivy, its streets filled with laughter that did not echo anymore. They saw themselves, not as they were now, but as they had once been in 100 quiet moments long since let go. Not memories, reminders of the self beneath the years. The fruit dimmed, and the traveler lowered their hand. The hush returned. All around them, the sleepwalkers continued their slow wander, never pausing, never watching. But now, something had shifted. One of them, the smallest, cloaked in what looked like starlight and moss, paused as they passed. They placed something gently in the crook of a tree before moving on, a single folded note, bound by no string. When the traveler approached, the note unfolded without touch. There was no writing, just a single pressed petal, still fragrant, and a breath of thought. The way forward remembers you. The ember path glowed once more at the orchard's edge, where the trees grew thinner and the hush began to hum with something new. Not urgency, not fear, expectation. The traveler stepped away from the orchard, past the sleepwalkers, past the fruit, and back onto the soft earth laced with light. Behind them, the orchard faded, not vanishing, but settling, like a dream returning to sleep. Ahead, the trees arched again, forming a tunnel of dark branches and flowering shadow. The air smelled of rain on old stone. Somewhere far beyond, there was the echo of chimes, and something greater than memory waiting in the quiet. The path had become narrower now, lined not just with embers, but with small, delicate runes etched in moss. They glowed faintly as the traveler passed, as if recognizing them. And Hollowvale, not a destination, but a becoming. Chapter 5. The Threshold of the Forgotten Gate. The trees closed in gently now, not as a warning, but as a hush drawn deeper. The light had changed. Fewer embers lined the path, yet those that remained glowed with a richer warmth, amber and copper, soft as breath on a mirror. Their glow didn't push away the shadows, but folded them into something velvety, like dusk wrapped in candlelight. The traveler walked slowly, not from fatigue, for their body felt lighter than it had in memory, but from reverence. The silence here was full of presence. It draped the world like a velvet curtain and carried with it the feeling that each step was being watched, not with eyes, but with remembrance. Beneath their feet, the earth had changed. No longer mossy or soft with leaves, it had turned to smooth stone, veined with patterns worn down by centuries. Glyphs shaped like roots, eyes, and towers spiraled faintly beneath the dust. Some of them flickered gently, as though responding to the traveler's steps. The trees fell away one by one, until at last the forest opened into a wide hollow, sunken, cradled between ridges of ancient stone, and at its heart stood the gate. It was not tall, not grand, not gilded. It was quiet, a low arch of dark stone covered in vines that glowed with silver memory. Time had not broken it, only softened it. Moss curled over its crown like sleep around a brow. At its center, suspended where a door might once have hung, was only mist. Cool, silver, and still like breath held in a cold room. The traveler stepped closer, and the gate breathed. Just once, a slow inhale, as if recognizing the soul that now stood before it. Around the edge of the arch, the vines shimmered and shifted, as though they, too, were alive. Symbols bloomed on their leaves, dream script and forgotten tongues that sang softly to themselves. Not a warning, a welcome, a remembering. Beneath the arch, the mist stirred, and the traveler glimpsed something impossible within it. A staircase spiraling downward into stars. A hallway of mirrors that reflected not faces but choices. A garden grown through the ribs of time, where bells bloomed like flowers. A room, just a room, small, familiar, with a bed, a candle, a book left open to a page half read. The traveler stepped back, not from fear, but because something in them had softened, loosened, broken in the gentlest way, the way old sorrow does when it's finally given a place to rest. They turned and sat at the edge of the hollow. The sky above was veiled in deep blue now, scattered with slow-turning stars. And though the gate pulsed softly behind them, it did not urge. It waited. The traveler rested. They closed their eyes, and the hush of the forest settled over them like a lullaby woven in moss. Within, the echoes of the journey stirred softly, the whispers of the stones, the pool of lanterns, the sleepwalkers beneath their glowing trees, and the ember path itself, winding like a quiet flame through the dark. Each memory was a light, not to guide forward, but to hold, to keep, eh? And there, beneath the stars, the traveler understood. Hollowvale was never lost. It had simply fallen into memory, into hush, into waiting. A city not of ruins, but of rest. A place not meant to be returned to, but to be felt, carried. The traveler would pass through the gate when the time was right, when they were ready not to wake, but to remember fully, to step beyond forgetting. But not just yet, not tonight. Tonight, the hush would hold them, and Hollowvale would wait, behind its breathless gate, wrapped in sleep and lit by the gentle ember path. Chapter 6. Where the City Sleeps. The air beyond the gate was not colder, only quieter. The kind of quiet that does not merely surround you, but lives within you, filling your ribs, your throat, the soft spaces behind your eyes. As the traveler passed beneath the low arch of stone and vine, the world seemed to pause, not to end, but to turn, as if this moment had always waited, just out of reach. There was no wind, no birds, no footfall, but their own. And yet, the city was not empty. Hollowvale lay in a soft basin of stone and ivy, veiled in twilight, neither night nor day. The buildings, once grand, were now gently crumbled, arched windows open to the sky, towers leaning as if in conversation, walls traced with moss that shimmered faintly under the lightless glow above. There were no sharp edges here. Time had worn them all smooth, and the city breathed, not with air, but with presence, a slow rhythmic thrum beneath the stones, as if Hollowvale dreamed, and in its dreaming remembered itself. The traveler walked the streets where the ember path wove onward, now faded, almost gone, but still there if one followed the warmth in their chest. It passed beneath stone arches, through open doorways filled with dust and petals, across bridges laced with ivy and mist. There were signs of life, not recent, not loud, but gentle echoes left behind. A teacup, half full, on a balcony that overlooked nothing but stars. A child's scarf, caught forever in the fingers of a railing. A book, splayed open on a step, its pages fluttering though there was no breeze. A single shoe, moss-cradled and waiting. Each detail was quiet and tender and unchanged. The city was not haunted. It was held. The traveler paused before a great round plaza at the center of Hollowvale. In its heart stood a fountain, dry but not broken. Vines wreathed its bowl, and from its basin rose an arching sculpture of open hands, palms upward, catching falling leaves that had long since turned to light. Around the plaza stood hollow statues, worn and faceless, not as monuments, but as witnesses. Each one had a posture of gentleness, some kneeling, some seated, one resting against the wall, with its hand laid across its chest. They were not watching the traveler. They were being watched, through memory, by all who had walked this path before. The traveler sat at the edge of the fountain. Their breath came slower now. The hush filled their limbs. The ember in their heart, the one given freely and gently and without name, had grown still, not extinguished, but settled, like the last glow in a hearth before dream takes you. They closed their eyes, and Hollowvale spoke. Not in words, not even in sound, but in knowing. A flood of calm, not joy, not sorrow, but that deeper quiet beneath both rose gently through their bones. Not a story told, but a story recognized. One that had lived inside them all along, unnamed and long forgotten. It had no plot, no climax, no end, only a door. And now it had opened. They saw the orchard again, the lantern pool, the dream runes on the path, and they saw a city, not asleep, but sleeping, by choice. A sanctuary of forgetting, a lullaby built from stone and vine, a resting place for the parts of the self too soft to survive the waking world. And above it all, the sky, not black, not blue, but the color of silence before morning. The traveler rose, not to leave, but to join, to remain in some small way, to become one more hush within the hush, one more echo of stillness, not as a statue, not as a shadow, but as a story held quietly in the folds of Hollowvale's dream. And as they stepped once more through the city's soft, broken streets, the ember path faded behind them, but never quite vanished. Because the ember path is not a trail. It is a memory of belonging, a quiet pull toward home when the day has grown too loud, a place within you where the hush has always been waiting. You may forget its name. You may forget the gates, the orchard, the pool, but Hollowvale remembers you always. And if, by some quiet chance, your eyes are still open, if your thoughts still drift like slow mist above the embers, then let this be just a small whispered reminder. If this story brought you a moment of stillness, a sigh of peace, or a place to rest your thoughts, don't hesitate to gently like, subscribe, or follow. Whatever soft shape that takes in this world, these quiet gestures help the path stay lit, so that others may find their way here too. When the night feels too heavy, or the waking world too loud, each click is a tiny lantern. Each share another step on the trail, no rush, no pressure, just a gentle nudge beneath the stars. Thank you for walking with me through Hollowvale. Now, let go if you haven't already. Let the hush take over, and sleep well, traveler. You are home.